Much like the Fantastic Four series of the 90s, the Iron Man series of the time also had a very disjointed first season and second season. With the first season coming off like they were trying to parody He-Man or G.I. Joe, with Iron Man having a team of his own, which isn't uncommon. You would usually call that the Avengers, but no. It was kind of based off of the team Forceworks, which consisted of Century, War Machine, Scarlet Witch, Hawkeye, Spider-Woman, Spider-Woman who had this crush on Tony, which I don't ever remember that actually being a thing in the comics, but at the same time, this was Julia Carpenter, and I don't know too much about Julia Carpenter aside from more recent things in the comics. I've only known her for about a couple of decades in terms of comics, but it was kind of far out there because in the first season, it treated the Mandarin, the big boss of Iron Man, as kind of like a Skeletor-esque villain. He'd be spying on Iron Man, sending his minions out to do things. For some reason, his biggest flunky was MODOK, which that did never made too much sense to me because the Mandarin and MODOK, I've never seen them as that close of allies. We're thinking like, Robotnik and Snively, or Megatron and Starscream, stuff like that. It was far out there and kind of weird in a lot of places. And honestly, a lot of the episodes of the first season were just so disjointed, kind of all over the place. It was weird. It was just really kind of out there. And it just never really caught much of my attention. Even being just 13 episodes for the first season, I was kind of ready for it to be over with after just a little while because it was just like, wow, this was kind of bland. It was not the most memorable thing around. I do remember the Mandarin, but that was only because the dude was friggin' green. I always wondered about that. It's just, why is this dude green? Does he have a disease or something? I always thought he was an alien, only to later on in my life find out, oh, Mandarins are an actual people. That is, that's a little problematic. It was the most surreal experience, but the real surreal experience came with the second season, and that's the season that I remember the most, specifically because of the opening, where it's just, I am Iron Man, just being repeated with guitar riffs and metal playing in the background as Tony has his shirt off or something, and he's just working at the forge, banging away at metal. Like that whole thing of like a lot of elements that we see in terms of the Robert Downey Jr. portrayal of Iron Man. It's just like I saw so many elements of that here, where the phrase "I am Iron Man." It's just like, yes, there it is. That's where I kind of thought of that phrase from. And Tony just working away at a forge, building his armor, banging on the whole at the forge, just building an armor. It's just like, yes, that is ingrained in my childhood. Like, seriously, I loved the second season of Iron Man. It was cool, it was metal, things were a lot deeper and darker. They never went as far as to do Demon in a Bottle, but, much like with the third Iron Man movie, Tony was dealing with phobias and fears, and Rhodey was going through some shit as well. They pretty much did away with all of the supporting casts of Force Works, which always took me kind of off guard, because it was just like, you basically shoved in this ensemble cast only to get rid of them. It's just like, you might as well have just had a spin-off called Force Works, just to kind of, do away with all of that. But honestly, if they had started out the series the way the second season was, I feel like it might have lasted a little bit longer. But again, like I feel like a lot of the people who worked on many of these Marvel properties at first wanted to go kind of campy with it, but once you saw the success of the X-Men series and how the darker, deeper themes and tones did so well, a lot of these Marvel properties basically tried to course correct into a more deeper and darker storylines and situations and costume work. Honestly, like a lot of the lighting when it came to a lot of this stuff kind of shifted with the Fantastic Four and Iron Man. But that's why it also always caught me off guard with people apparently thinking that Iron Man was always a robot back in the day, because with this series, I never thought Iron Man was a robot. I always knew he was a dude in a suit. Also, Iron Man having a secret identity, people not knowing that Tony is Iron Man. Oh man, that feels like such a foreign concept nowadays. But back in the day, it was like, oh, his bodyguard Iron Man. Like, that was always the thing for me, especially with the build up in like stuff like this series and Iron Man Armored Adventures. Like, people didn't know that Iron Man was Tony. So, having it be out there is also kind of surreal to me, because it's just like I'm so used to it being a secret identity. Well, at the time I was, after having over a decade of Iron Man just being Tony Stark and people knowing it, it's just kind of like, yeah, you have enough time to deal with it. But honestly, I really did love the second season, the way Fing Fang Foom was portrayed, the way MODOK was portrayed. It just did a lot to enhance the feeling of a lot of their characters. Like, they basically just trimmed the excess fat. That isn't to say that I don't love any of the side characters like Scarlet Witch and Hawkeye and Spider-Woman and all that. It's just that they never got enough time to really shine in terms of the series. So it's just like, you might as well just get rid of them so that you can actually shine more of a spotlight on Iron Man himself, Tony. Like, do a little bit more with his situation. Give us more of the Mandarin and what he's all about and his machinations. Like, seriously. And honestly, it adds on to the fact of why people were just so upset about the fact that the Mandarin at the beginning wasn't really anything at all, just some actor. Because, in the past few decades, he was Iron Man's greatest enemy. In both Iron Man series of the 2000s and the 90s, it was just like, it was the Mandarin. The end all be all boss, the rival for Iron Man was the Mandarin. To not do him any justice, just no. Like, even his goofy ass portrayal here was still more intimidating and more fearsome and more interesting than what we got in the MCU, and that was always just a shame. I'm glad they're doing what they're doing with the character in terms of Shang-Chi. I feel like it really does fit, and considering that they're replacing Fu Manchu, which is a whole situation in and of itself, is actually a very brilliant way of doing things. And that connection between the Mandarin and Shang-Chi, honestly, I'd kind of love to see it actually happen in the comics, but sometimes that's not always executed the best, so let sleeping dogs lie on that one. But, the Mandarin's always been kind of cool in my book. Love the 10 rings of power and all that good stuff, and again, I always love an excuse to say the words Fing Fang Foom. Like, oof. Just such a satisfying way as it passes through your mouth. Also, I bring forward the fact of MODOK, being very similar to Starscream and Snively from Sad AM, is because I'm fairly certain in that series, in the Iron Man series, he was voiced by the same guy who was involved with that series back during the day. Like, at least I really do think he was. That might have been in a later on series. I'm not quite certain, but whenever I think of MODOK's voice, I always think of that high pitched kind of weaselly voice. It was just something that always kind of stuck with me. I think I'm thinking of Charles Adler. I think that's what it is. I'm looking it up right now, and I think that might be why I'm thinking of MODOK's voice like that. So I might have gotten things a little bit turned around for the most part. I'm not quite sure. Yep, I am in fact thinking of Charles Adler. That's literally it. Because when I think of Starscream and I think of this, Modoc and the portrayal that he was given, it just all adds up. I don't think Charles Adler actually ever did the voice of Starscream, but the fact that he didn't is a shame. Nope, he did it in the Michael Bay live action and Transformer films. So that's me just inserting Charles Adler where he's not supposed to actually be in. So if nothing else, he just has that distinctive a voice. But it's the voice I always think of when it comes to Modoc. And can you blame me? If you've ever heard Charles Adler's voice, it's just one of those things that really sticks with you. But I've gone completely off the rails. I'm just be real. The Iron Man series, not the most memorable in the world, but it was fun while it was on television. I had a good time watching it, and I'm interested to hear from you. So tell me your thoughts and feelings in the comment section below. Let me know if you like this series or ultimately didn't like this series and you feel that it's better off forgotten. And if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. Or don't. I ain't your daddy. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.